everybody. Thank you for being here. Um, this is a program that we are hosting for Older Adult Month, which begins today. Today's June 1st. And so we're very happy to be able to do this for the first time. We've never tried to do a program like this. And I just want to read a little bit about why we're doing the program and what we hope to achieve. So it's a conversation about the joys, surprises, and life lessons that appear most clearly in the rearview mirror. In some sense, the inspiration for this program comes from the negative representation of aging we see commonly in society and social interactions. To counter such messages, we want to focus on the passions and joys of older adults in their own right and to consider the valuable wisdom that only comes from a place of experience. This gift of life reflection cannot be bought, but it can be shared with anyone. Excuse me. So what would it be like to hear advice from yourself at some point in the future? What might you be passionate about, concerned by? What aspect of your life turned out to be the most grounding or least significant? And for those who are sharing, what message would you want to share with your younger self after everything you've seen? Through these interviews with older adults in our community, we invite everyone to partake in these reflections as a way to celebrate the richness and diversity of life in an ongoing conversation. And my name's Sequoia. I'm the older advocate for the Vaughan Public Library System. And this project came out of a working group that we have called Creative Age, where we're trying to come up with ideas where we can both celebrate older adults as well as give them creative programming that challenges and engages. So with that, I would like to introduce our first guest. His name is James, and I'm going to read a little bit about him. And from there, we're just going to jump off into a conversation, which I hope will be engaging for everyone. James grew up in a Scarborough ghetto with a family plagued by violence, abuse, mental health issues, and addictions. He had his first drink at 8, foreshadowing his own struggles with addiction that started at 12. Immersed in drugs and alcohol and with a penchant for crime, James was expelled from 2 high schools, one for assaulting a teacher, the other for using narcotics. Despite having a child at 18 years old, James was caught in the grips of addiction, and he willingly submitted. As his life spiraled out of control, James turned to harder drugs, smoking crack and injecting cocaine, and could easily have been just another statistic in the failing war on drugs, until his brother finally convinced him to attend a 12-step recovery meeting on August 22nd, 1989. That was the day James's entire world shifted. After going to a long-term treatment center in Waterloo, James did a 180. He was awarded custody of his 3-year-old daughter. He completed his high school education, and he went on to study English, philosophy, and sociology at Wilfrid Laurier University, earning an honors BA in 1997. From there, James attended a personal growth and leadership development course called Lifestream and rediscovered his passion for teaching and facilitation. Stepping into his dream, James has gone on to learn and facilitate the same personal growth seminars in Canada and the United States, and has helped thousands of people on the journey towards falling in love with themselves. He dreams of a world where all people embrace truth and joyfully share their gifts with perfect self-expression. He sees his life purpose as being empowered and being a healthy, trusting, committed, and worthy human being. So thank you so much for being here and for being so open about your story and so willing to share,
Oh, you're welcome.
James.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be here. Sam as well for organizing and helping us get off the ground. It is a pleasure to be here and listening to you read that. I know I shared that information with you, and it seems a little surreal sometimes to think back that my life has gone through so many challenges and so many obstacles, and that I've been able to overcome those to be the person that I want to be today. The kind of person who does love himself and is able to make choices from a place of honoring who I am and my truth.
Hmm. So did you find, if you don't mind me just jumping in here,
Sure.
did you find it sounds like you kind of did a very quick, you went through a process where you quickly changed the trajectory of your life. Would you say that that's correct?
Well, it happened when I was invited to that 12-step meeting. Now, of course, I resisted for a long time to go. And I finally broke down and said, okay, I'll go to a meeting. If you just get off my back, just leave me alone. And of course, my brother agreed to that. He probably had some inkling that attending a meeting might have some impact. And it wasn't until actually 10 years after my first meeting, I realized what had struck me the most. And there was a gentleman at that meeting. His name was Andy, and he was sharing in front of the entire group. And he was talking about his life, his struggles, his loves, his griefs. He was laughing, he was crying, he was showing up as a full human being. And that in and of itself inspired me somewhere deep down inside. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be free to have my feelings and to express them, to share my thoughts and my experiences without fear of judgment. I just wanted to be present in my own life and in the lives of other people. And so when I realized that it was 10 years later, that was the moment, that was the person who inspired me to change my life.
So that happened at the very first meeting that you went to,
Yeah.
where you, okay.
Yeah.
So you were ready, there were,
I didn't think I was ready. There was so much of me that just wanted to stay in self-destruct mode. I was very much in active addiction, and I didn't think I was going to stop. I didn't want to stop. And I only went to get my brother off my back because he was relentless. Come to a meeting, come to a meeting, come to a meeting. And I finally broke down and said yes. But some part of me was ready, a part of me that I didn't recognize yet.
and was your brother also dealing with addiction? Is that why he felt that the meetings would be
Oh yeah. Yeah,
beneficial?
my whole family has been touched by addiction in one way or another. So it's not just me, it's my entire family. And some of us, my sister, Kim, passed away in active addiction when she was 31 years old. And I was 3 years clean at the time.
Oh,
And
that's
yeah, it was a very difficult time in my life. However, I relied on the people who could comfort me and ground me and help me move through the grief and the suffering. And I came out the other end feeling stronger and more sure that I was on the right path.
that's very inspiring. And for people who are dealing with addiction, um, because so many people don't have a clean kind of break from their addiction. They kind of go back and forth, or um, they have trouble finding the ability to believe in themselves enough, I think.
Yeah. And my personal belief is that is in there. in all of us, that's in the essence, the truth of who we are. There's a part of us that really wants to live, that wants to thrive, that wants to share, that wants to give our gifts. And if we could only allow ourselves a moment to be vulnerable enough to see that, to feel it, to know it and own it, that's when we start to make choices that are aligned more with growth and well-being instead of sabotage and self-destruction.
At what point did you know that you were not going to use again and that you were fully in recovery?
Uh, I, well, the first couple of months they were a little shaky, obviously, and it wasn't until I actually went to the treatment. It was a long-term treatment center in Waterloo. It was a 6-month minimum. I was there for close to a year, and it was having that grounding that really enabled me to start making choices that were, again, aligned with my higher truth, with my highest being.
And just curious, like the treatment center, I know that there are private treatment centers and then there are ones that are maybe covered under OHIP.
Yeah.
And then there's sort of ones that are in between, I would imagine. And I'm sure it's changed since that time, since the 90s. Um, if somebody is feeling like they could benefit from that type of a center, where would they start in terms of like trying to find out what's available and what their options are?
It's a good question. I know there's a lot of community resources available that have access to that information and what's available in terms of what's covered by OHIP, what might be a hybrid model, and what might be a fully private facility. But I don't think it matters which one you attend. I think it's the intention that we go there with that makes the biggest impact and the biggest difference. The one I went to was fully funded by OHIP. I couldn't have gone otherwise at that time, at that point in my life, and I willingly kind of submitted to the entire program. So there's got to be a sense of surrender as well,
Mm.
knowing that okay, I'm here for a reason, and as difficult as it got, the demons that I faced in those 12 months were I thought I would never be able to do it. There were so many hurdles I thought I would never be able to overcome, but determination, and really the support of others and leaning on other people, allowing other people to love me until I could learn to love myself. That was huge.
When you say hurdles, do you mean like internal kind of doubts and
Yeah, yeah. For most of my life, I just I really felt if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me. I really felt like that. I felt worthless most of my life. I felt less than, and I would never have thought in a million years that I could be where I am today from my lens back then. Had you told me in early recovery that I'd be one day in front of a room talking to people about changing their lives and finding their own power and lighting up their own uh, relationships, I would have laughed in your face. I thought, no way. But there's hope. There's where there's a heartbeat, there's hope.
did you feel when you stayed for a year, was that voluntarily or were you kind of were you advised to stay that long or?
Yeah, well, there were assessment periods throughout the treatment process, and at certain junctions, they would either say, "Okay, well, we think we need to hold you back a few weeks, or we can let you progress into the recovery process." So I was held back several times, and of course, every time it happened, I was so resistant. I was insulted. I was this and that, but I couldn't see myself as clearly as they were seeing me. So they were making choices that were beneficial for me. All I had to do was again surrender and submit to that process and allow them to be my guides.
What were they seeing that they thought made you vulnerable or not able to progress? Do you know?
It's difficult for me to say now. It's been so many years. It's been like 30 years now since I've been there, and I don't have access to all those records. But uh, I just know that they saw something. It's probably just in my mannerisms, my behaviors, my how I showed up. And I can certainly admit that I'm a stubborn fellow. I get kind of set in my ways. I think I know what's best. I intellectualize a lot of things. And so to get from my head to my heart, I think that's probably the biggest reason they held me back. So I could find my journey to my heart instead of living from my head most of the time.
Hmm. So the 12 steps, was that something that immediately spoke to you, or was it a hard one for you to
Well, it did. The
embrace?
fellowship, there's different aspects of 12 step groups that I was drawn to and I was repelled by. The fellowship in 12 step rooms is phenomenal, in my opinion. I went to Narcotics Anonymous, that was my preferred 12 step group, and I found a lot of camaraderie and connectedness and people willing to support each other throughout the most dire circumstances. Another, of course, it is a 12 step based group. And so the part of the journey is working through those. And for me, I personally struggled with a lot of the God steps, the ones that wanted me to accept a higher power or submit to uh, any kind of notion like that. I worked through it though. Like I was able to work around those and stay in the program and work the program to the best of my ability, as they say in the program. And I think the real reason, the real power is in helping other people. That's where they say in the program that we only keep what we have by giving it away.
Mhm.
So I made it a priority to reach out to new people, to have sponsees that I could lead through the steps as well and guide them in their recovery. So it was very important to me to be of service to others. And it still is today.
Mm. You're still involved with uh, helping other people in the program.
Well, I stopped going to 12 step groups after I went to the personal growth courses because that's when my life changed again. The trajectory kind of changed somewhat. So, but I started helping people in different ways. It was the same idea, helping people fall in love with themselves, just in a different format.
That's beautiful. So there is one question somebody has submitted. Did did you ever tell Andy, I think, is that your brother?
No,
How,
he was the gentleman who inspired me at that first meeting.
oh, I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
did you ever tell him how important he was, and are you still in touch?
Unfortunately, no. No, I did see him for a couple of years in the rooms in my early recovery, and but when I finally realized that it was him, his message that had grabbed me and inspired me the way it did, I went back and he wasn't there anymore. I
Mm,
couldn't find him. I don't. I hope he didn't relapse. I hope he didn't go back to using, but he just wasn't in that room anymore or in those rooms.
mhm,
But I certainly, in my mind, on my gratitude list, he's
mm.
he's up there. He's up there.
Okay. That's really wonderful. Really appreciate it, James. And I'm sure that hearing you be so open and willing to share is going to touch people and help people. And there's many people out there who need help. So thank
I
you
agree.
so
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So our second guest, Cheryl. Cheryl grew up in the 50s in Toronto's West End, and she spent summers in Owen Sound. She's had several careers over her lifetime, including dental assistant, a child care worker in a residential treatment center, and involvement in the theater as a clown, mime, and dancer. She's an avid theater goer. Her main project currently is the Owen Sound Emancipation Festival and Picnic, which is in its 162nd year. She is also updating her 7 by 5 foot family tree canvas. So, a little bit about the Emancipation Festival. It was originally called Emancipation Day Picnic, and it commemorates the British Commonwealth Emancipation Act of August the 1st, 1934. Since, or sorry, 1834. Since 1862, descendants of those who escaped slavery and found freedom and peace in Canada gather in Owen Sound's beautiful Harrison Park and other places such as the Grey Roots Museum and Archives over the civic holiday weekend. And this is a time for fellowship and reflection with family and community to share memories and keep the picnic and other traditions alive for future generations. So
Hi.
thank you so much for being here, Cheryl.
Well, you're welcome. I've never done anything like this before, so it's very interesting listening to everybody. And yeah, I'm a fifth generation Canadian, and growing up downtown was quite interesting. I came from a single parent and went to public schools, often the only Black kid in the school. So that was interesting. But my main focus was every summer I spent up in Owen Sound and lots of relatives. Everybody there is a relative. So I shouldn't say everybody, but at the picnic, basically everybody is a relative. And it was great. We had fun doing races. We cooked. We talked with other people, we got to know each other, and got to know a little bit of our history. I mean, people don't believe you when you say you were in Canada before Canada was Canada. At that time, it was known as Upper Canada, and in the 1800s. So people often wonder, well, where do you come from? Canada. What do you mean you come from Canada? Well, my family's been here for, for me, 5 generations, and nobody can understand that. And I like to help them understand that by showing them my family tree and things like that.
And is that part of what people, I'm sure it is, but like how all the family trees interconnect?
It's true. My great grandmother had 12 children, and of those 12 children, um, oh, how can I say it? They all brought their own baskets to the picnic. And so I've got second, third, fourth cousins. And even though some people weren't related, it didn't matter. You're still part of a family when you go up to Owen Sound for the picnic. You could come up to Owen Sound for the Emancipation picnic and you'd be really welcome.
That sounds wonderful. I did see that brief interview on a video that you sent, and yeah, it does look like a wonderful time. Everybody's welcome. Everybody is participating. A lot of people, I guess, would like to do or are curious about their family tree, I'm sure, and don't know where to begin. How did you start that?
My great aunt, at the age of about 70, sat down on a manual typewriter and started notating everybody's name and where they came from and who their children were. And I was really fascinated by that. So I took all that information and I found a family tree program and started putting it in. And it got so large that I thought, I've got to do something with this. And I think over a period of about 5 years, I designed a canvas for it and put everybody's name up with my great grandmother's picture. And from that time on, everybody was just awed at seeing all these names and their relations. So last year they decided it was time to renew the canvas. It was about 15 years old, so a lot of kids weren't on there, and they said, well, "Where am I? Where do I fit in?" And so we formed a committee, and that's what we're working on now, getting everybody's name and as many people as we can possibly get. But there are other families in that area. You would call them branches of our family because you've got Collingwood, you've got Windsor. All those people come up to Owen Sound for the picnic. And it'd be interesting to extend that family tree to all the other branches as well.
Yeah. Are there other people that you know of that are working on a similar project?
A lot of people do work on their family tree, but we haven't done any comparisons at this point. And the our job, once we get this done, is to help other people create their own family trees and start delving back into the history. There, Ontario is so rich. Well, I shouldn't say only Ontario. You've got Nova Scotia.
Mhm.
If you've ever visited Nova Scotia and the museum there, they have a lot of Black history there. Even out in Calgary, there's some, I mean,
Oh.
people don't believe there's Black cowboys, but there are. And I think the whole idea is to teach our children so that they could teach others what their family was about.
Mm-hmm. Do you, so you know the year when your family came to Canada or came to this area?
I don't know the exact date. I believe it was in the early 1800s. 1834 sticks in my mind because I know it was around that time. But my one great grandmother, her family came from England. And then my great grandfather, his family came from the States. And there's a lot of Owen Sound history on both sides of the family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm answering your question quite
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And so the the grandfather who came from the States, was he escaping slavery? Is that why he
That
came?
he wasn't escaping for slavery. Um, he came as a free man and he was allotted some land up in the Simcoe County. But many of the families up there were escaped slaves. Um, I
That
can't give you the exact names of them, but they're all integrated at this point.
so they came up before your grandfather.
Some came up before or even at the same time.
Mhm.
So the 1800s, 1820s, 30s, around there.
Nice. Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm wondering what kind of reception did they have in Canada, like compared to the States?
Well, it it's difficult to say. The reception isn't always good. And in my particular family, it was an integrated family. So my great grandmother was white, my great grandfather was Black, and then they had 12 children. So it was a very difficult time for them uh, being up in Owen Sound. My grandfather was um, killed in a quarry accident, an explosion, along with his white nephew, who was also killed at the same time in that explosion. So growing up, you did have a lot of prejudices in the town. People uh, jobs were scarce, so mostly people farmed. My grandmother worked on a boat as well as my grandfather, and they sailed the Great Lakes as cooks. a lot of people were worked on the railway as porters. Um, if you ever go up to Collingwood, there's a big rock by the lake, and that has all of the sailors, both black and white, that sailed the Great Lakes.
Wow.
So, so my family, the Scots, are all on the. My family is a Scot. Um, their names are all on this particular rock. Um,
The last name is
yeah,
Scott.
my
That's the
last,
last.
my maiden name was Scott. Um, but yeah, a lot of people up there, if you're black, you're mostly a farmer, or you worked on the railroad, or you worked as a porter on the railroad, or in a ship.
Is that why people did not go to the city? Like it was an easier life in the outs on the outskirts
Uh,
of.
I don't know if it was an easier life. Um, People tend to stick together, and I think you had more support if you're in a small town than if you come to the city. Being in the city, and I was basically one of the first ones born in the city, you're pretty isolated as well. So going up to Owen Sound during the summers, it was great. My aunt took us in. She took in all the cousins, and at least that way I had sort of brothers and sisters while I was up there.
Yeah. And why did your family move to Toronto?
It was just my mother. My
Oh,
mother came down here for work, and there were other relatives that were down here in the city. And so she started out working on Spadina in the rag trade. She sewed, did that sort of thing, and was raising me. I was raised in a two-bedroom or two-room, sorry, third floor apartment on Barton Avenue. Uh, Played at Christie Pitts, went to Palmerston School. Great area, great kids. Um, and from there, things just got better for my mother and myself. We moved several times. I got interested in the theater because she worked for Ed Mirvish, and he had a little company above on Brunswick Avenue and making plastics. And below that office was the poor Alex. So that's why I got interested in theater. But growing up in Toronto is very interesting. There's so much you can be exposed to here. People
mhm.
don't realize that the old city was really good. I don't go, the only time I'm downtown now is when I go to the theater because it's changed so much.
So
But
you don't,
then,
yeah. Sorry.
yeah,
So so you got involved with the theater. Could you just go over that how that happened again with Ed
how I got
Mirvish?
involved with the theater,
Yeah.
partly because my mother worked for Ed Mirvish and I
Okay.
was exposed to theater as a young child and continued going downtown for the theater. But I got into the theater because I worked in childcare, and childcare was such a stressful
Mm.
business at that point that when I left, I thought, I've got to get out of this and get into something, just do something different. So I took theater classes. I studied mime with a lady named Naomi Terrell. She was an incredible person, and clown, and went to acting classes, got into it that way, and just, you know, worked my way around different little things like having a little company called Clowntastics where we entertain children, and also working for Playwrights Canada where we typed plays for people. So my life took a whole shift. Um,
And
and
you are you writing still? Because
I don't write. I don't write. Playwrights Canada was just a job that fell into my lap one day, and met a lot of good people. But no, I'm a housewife now. I've been through various jobs all my life and finally settled on this.
That's that's great. I know Ed Mirvish. Another story I heard Molly Johnson, the singer, the jazz singer,
Mhm.
talk about. She started also through, I believe, his support of the arts and theater.
Oh, yeah.
And
Very nice guy.
a nice piece of local history, Toronto history, and Owen Sound history. And it's so great to meet you and hear your story,
Thank
Cheryl.
you. Thank you.
And thanks so much for being here.
You're very welcome. It's very interesting.
Yeah, for me, for us too. This is the first time we're doing this, so it's so nice to connect in this way. You know, in the library, often our connections are quite a bit briefer, but I know that I think you've been involved with Daniel's writing group. Is that
The book
that's why I
club.
thought you, oh, the book club.
I go to
Pardon
the
me.
book club.
Pardon me. Okay. Because yeah, he also has a very active writing group as well as the book club.
Maybe that's
Anyways,
my next step.
okay, yeah, maybe to write your memoirs, maybe.
I'll try. That would be good,
I know that
actually.
that group is very supportive of each other. You know, if you wanted to begin by just writing maybe one little aspect, one little
Mhm.
story, and then if you did take it to the group, they would give you a lot of constructive feedback. I've heard a lot.
Something for the future after this tapestry gets done.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, something to look forward to.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, Cheryl. So we're going to move on now to our third guest, Steve. Steve is the child of immigrant parents who came from Greece seeking a better life. His family raised and instilled in him values such as self-sacrifice, hard work, and the importance of education. These characteristics helped to shape him throughout his life. After finishing a career in the insurance industry, he has entered a new phase, hopefully one that honors his past and allows him to continue to grow, give back, and have some fun. He is still a full-time parent, and he finds joy in passing along the traits and values gifted to him by his parents. These days, he likes to work out and to kayak. He's an avid reader. He teaches Sunday school to teenagers, and he volunteers at Global Medic, an organization that provides emergency aid and food to areas dealing with natural disasters around the world. So thank you so much for being here, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. And it's interesting that you're still a full-time parent.
Yes, I had children later in life, so I have three kids. They're three teenagers, and they're still living in the house. You'll probably hear them in the background doing various things, and yeah, it's wonderful.
I guess it's wonderful that you have this time that you can spend with them.
Well, I was fortunate that I ended the insurance career. My kids are still rather young, but they're at a point now where they're much more independent than they would have been a few years ago. So that sort of allows me a wonderful balance to be able to spend time with them, but also hopefully to do some other things that I enjoy and to help out in areas where I can help out. So it's a good time. I'm very blessed, very fortunate to have that right now.
Hmm. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about your volunteer work with Global Medic.
It's Global Medic is an organization that helps out worldwide whenever there's a disaster or famine or something that's going on. It's an organization that will helps out sending food and other items and emergency kits and things like that They put things in backpacks usually, and then they're shipped out into the world. It's a great organization. One thing that I really like about doing it, and to be honest, I haven't been able to do it, have time in the last little while, is that the way it's set up, it's very simple for people, to anyone, to simply go on their website, volunteer, set up a time when it's convenient for them. So you don't have to feel like this is long-term commitment, that I have to go there, and what if I can't, and all these issues that many of us have. Or if you do have the time, you could certainly go in there as often and as much as you want as well. Feel very fulfilled in doing that. And then feel like you're helping out in a worthy cause without, again, not feeling like you don't have the expertise and the background to help out in those types of causes or those types of charities. As much as I find there's a lot of volunteerism out there and a lot of charities out there, but I find for me, it's a bit of a struggle to find the right charity and to find a charity that also needs you to volunteer. It's not as simple, I found, as I thought it was going to be. Finding that mesh where you enjoy it and they need you, and fitting your schedule is a lot more complicated than I would have thought a couple of years ago.
Yeah, probably within it, you might, I'm imagining you might find an organization that, aligns with your values, but then maybe they don't have a job that fits. Maybe the tasks that they need help with don't really fit with you, or it's not a good a match, or whatever. So yeah, I would imagine it's hard, but most of us can't find the time to volunteer, unfortunately, when we're still working. It's it can be quite challenging just to, fulfill our job responsibilities, and then to find the energy to volunteer on top of that. I think, if an organization is able to is flexible that way, and is able to allow you to volunteer only as much as you're able, I think that's great, because sometimes the commitment is way too high. Like, like they want either way long term or too many hours in the week, or
Oh, exactly. I remember when I was working full time, like many organizations, the company had set time aside for us to do volunteer work and to help out in the community. And
oh, that's
I
great.
must have called 2-3 dozen places who, I guess because it was a short period of time, they didn't have the time to train you or have you come over when they have, full-time people helping out, or whatever the reason. And it was a struggle. Now that I'm not working anymore, and I do have more time, it is a little bit easier, and I certainly enjoy it. But again, finding that nice fit between the two, that again I enjoy, that I'm capable of helping out in an area that I'm interested in. Yeah, finding it all and having it combined is a bit of a, well, not a struggle anyway, but a lot more difficult, as I said, than I would have thought a little while ago. But it is enjoyable. It is fun.
And so have you been with that organization for a little while now?
It's less than a year. A friend of mine actually introduced me. I had explained my struggles in trying to find a nice place to volunteer, and without really, not being unsure as to what I really wanted to do, because you have the time, but you're still looking for it isn't pure altruism on my part. I'm also trying to gain things as well, to be more social, to be out there. You're always concerned about, as when you're not working and your kids are at school. Okay, well, I don't want to be alone. I want to still feel like I could participate and give back, and still gain, social skills and enjoy people's company, things like that. And finding all those things together can be difficult. And when I was speaking about that, what I was looking for, a friend of mine pointed that out and said, well, it's perfect in the sense it's flexible. There's people there. You can certainly talk. There are people my age or younger. So it kind of fit in, ticked off a lot of boxes for me, and it's been enjoyable. But I would like to do other things. I mean, there's other things out there as well. And for years ago, I used to be involved or work in a nursing home when I was younger. And I would like to do that at some point in the future as well. But I have a mom who isn't well, and my sisters and I do our best to take care of her. So I think I would do that if I wasn't maybe living it as much as I am now. And I think that's something that I'd like to do in the future.
Mm.
So
Yeah. One of the viewers is suggesting the Volunteer Canada website as
Mhm.
a resource, which can help people find a suitable place to volunteer. So
Thank
that's a
you.
good suggestion. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So are you just recently finding yourself with this extra time? Like, have you just recently left your
No,
full-time
it's
work?
been about 5 years. It feels recent because of COVID. I mean, it
Right.
feels like for like many of us, 2, 3 years, we kind of had a blank out. So it really feels like it's only been a couple of years. It's been 5 years for me. And you would ask me 5 years ago what I'd be doing 5 years from now. It probably wouldn't be any of the things that I'm doing right now. And maybe there's a lesson there. It's good to have goals, but it's also good to be flexible in what you do. And in the end, it's ultimately what makes you happy. So, yeah, I wasn't really thinking about doing any of that per se specifically. But here I am, and having that time and being able to do other things. It's just again trying to find that balance. I mean, you certainly want to do things that enrich your own life, but you also feel like again because of the way I was raised and having your parents teach you certain values and you probably, or at least I don't want to speak for other people, didn't understand completely where they were coming from. And then having your own family kind of crystallizes everything and kind of puts a focus on your life a little bit more and saying, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I get where they were coming from when you were just completely, I don't know, oblivious or ignorant of it or just not really aware of it. And I think having that one thing that comes at this point in my life, hopefully, is having some self-awareness and some understanding of where you came from and hopefully where you're going. And I guess it comes with the wrinkles, and hopefully that carries you into the future and keeps you happy and keeps you involved and helps you hopefully give back and be a better person for it. And hopefully that makes us a better society.
Mm. So did you have any of the classic challenges that people experience when they leave their full-time work? And I think, it might have been compounded by COVID. Did you struggle a bit at that time?
Yes, certainly, and it's the classic example of you have all that the time during the day, and it's trying to find something again that you go through different phases where you figure, okay, well, now I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to learn an instrument I never learned before, or do all these different things. And I remember reading an article that really sort of put it in perspective that said, if you're trying to be something or someone that you're not, you're going to fail in that struggle. What you really should be doing is finding the things that you enjoyed doing that you just never had time to do. So rather than decide I'm suddenly going to be an organ player or play the trumpet, I would instead take an instrument that I had been playing, like a guitar, and just play a little bit more. And if I was writing a little bit more, then I would write a little bit more than I was. Wasn't going to write the great Canadian novel, but I liked writing a little bit on my own for my own enjoyment, and I could still do that. So that was sort of the transition that I found what was difficult. And again, doing that volunteering and trying to do things that again found that balance. The other difficult part that I found initially was I was at a point where most of my friends were still working and most of the people I knew were still working. So I always knew that being socially involved with people was important, especially for men. I noticed that when I was growing up, that a lot of the older gentlemen that I knew, my dad or friends of my dad, as they had gotten older, they almost they became very they were just stuck in the house a lot more, whether it was self-imposed or not. I just noticed it's here were these gentlemen who had friends and who had gone out and had enjoyed things, and then as it got later in life, they ended up sitting at home and watching TV and sitting on the couch. And I promised myself that I wouldn't do that. And one thing I've tried to do, although it's still early on, anything could happen in the future, is always being mindful of that. Of always trying to sort of go out there and make sure that I'm not rationalizing about saying, oh, let's stay home and the traffic is really bad or the weather's bad and I'll just stay in tonight. That trying to go out and see friends and enjoy their company, because I think that's very important. I think that's one thing that we don't do enough of, or aren't cognizant enough to do when we first find ourselves not working. And the first couple of years, that was a little bit difficult. So I really try to find like-minded people, or people who had some time, and try to go out there and be a little bit more involved, because you can certainly fill your day. I mean, I go out kayaking, and that's fine, and do other things, and that's fine. But I think in the end, we're human beings, we're social beings, and you need to have that companionship and that friendship of other people.
Yes, and I guess that's another area where volunteering is just going to automatically help you with that. So it checks off a lot of boxes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So between that and I said, doing things that I enjoy, and there's still things to do with my kids. So that right now they still need me, fingers crossed for a little while longer. It's every day is, I mean, everyone comes home in the evening, and you just don't know where the day went. All of a sudden you're having dinner. The next thing you know, it's bedtime, and then away you go the next day. So it's really great. And if I could convey any message out there, that you can be as busy as you want to be, but to just really be aware of your time, and it's important, and it's fleeting, and to do what you can, and enjoy it wherever you can, and rather than look at things in a 20 or 30-year span, hopefully longer, for many of us, you take it incrementally, and find things that you enjoy, and pursue those goals. And it doesn't necessarily have to be writing the great Canadian novel. It doesn't have to be solving world peace. It doesn't have to be, solving world hunger. It's just whatever you can do in each day to find joy in your life, and also spread that joy a little bit, as well. Just those little things. We decide, are we going to yell at that driver cutting us in, or let them in, or if we're going to be nice to that cashier. There's little things like that, those little joys that make your day, and help other people, and that makes us positive, and hopefully makes us a little bit more positive in the world as well. So it's, again, trying to be aware of that on a daily basis as well.
Mm-hmm. That's beautifully said. Thanks, Steve. And maybe that's a good place for us to wind things down. I want to thank you all, James, Cheryl, and Steve, again for being here and giving us lots to think about. It was lovely to meet you all. And thank you so much.
Thank you. It's nice meeting everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a great day.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.